Salutations from space and aloha from Earth friends. Gemini Brett here, and it's a new year, perhaps. Certainly this is one of the best candidates for a true astronomical and therefore astrological new year, that being the sun's annual tropical Aries Ingress. Let's talk about why that is. We'll get into the sacred astronomy of the thing and then have a peek at the chart, because in mundane astrology, it's typically found that the Aries Ingress chart might be the chart that expresses the energies for the entire year to come. And it kind of depends on where on Earth you are. Because it is said in this mundane astrology tradition that when the sun moves into the sign of Aries, and I'm talking tropical Aries here, okay, that if at that time where you are, the rising sign is a fixed sign, then this chart will express the energies for the entire year to come, like until, in this case, the Aries Ingress next year, the calendar year of 2024, that if a cardinal sign is rising, the chart is good for half a year, and if a mutable sign is rising, then a quarter of a year. And it said that you want to cast charts for the seasonal shifts regardless. That, of course, would be the sun moving to the tropics, the Tropic of Cancer, the solstice, summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, so I call it northstice, and there's another reason for that. And the Libra Ingress, the equinox time when the sun shines directly above Earth's equator on the other side than from today. And then the solstice time, sun ingress Capricorn. Now, many traditions use that Capricorn ingress, right, northern hemisphere winter solstice, for a beginning of the year, especially in the kind of far north traditions, places like Germany, the UK. Why? Because, of course, the longest night is longer in places far from Earth's equator than in places close by. And so it's a much bigger deal when the sun is reborn after that longest night at winter solstice time, the birth of the light. Yeah. And so we find in some of the kind of German astrological traditions like cosmobiology, Uranian astrology, this emphasis on the sun's Capricorn ingress for the beginning of the year. I mean, if you argue for 0 Capricorn to start your year, however, the philosophical argument would suggest then Southern Hemisphere folks begin the year with their winter solstice, which of course is the sun's Cancer ingress. And, you know, this tale of two hemispheres, the seasonal opposition between northern and southern hemispheres is one thing, but I mean, even within one hemisphere, think about how different the seasonal expressions of the sun's dance are in London versus Honolulu, right? I mean, the tropics play very differently, or I could even say, you know, London and Athens, Greece, Alexandria, Egypt, yeah. One thing I can say for sure is Caesar's calendar and this whole idea of January 1st as the beginning of the year, for me, it just doesn't fly. I mean, it's almost as out of balance as daylight losing's crime, which we were just subjected to recently here in California where I live. They call it daylight savings time. It was once called wartime. Another term is summertime. But regardless, it's taking us out of the natural flow of light and night, right? It's so weird for everything to just shift by an hour suddenly. It is not natural, nor is like civil calendar time that does not choose to align its beginnings and endings, which of course are simply the beginning of the ending of the beginning again, because we're not talking about lines, but rather circles, friends. Where is the first point of the circumference of a circle? And it's kind of arbitrary. However, the tropical zodiac is about 2 circles. It's about the ecliptic, Earth's plane of orbit, or from our point of view, the plane that the sun takes orbiting us. And that, by the way, always passes through the tropics, hence names like tropical zodiac. And the equator, right? Earth's plane of day. The tropical zodiac is simply based upon the very beautiful, elegant, simple, directional astronomy expressed by the interface of the planes of day, that's the equator, and year, the ecliptic. People say that the tropical zodiac is not astronomical at all because our signs do not align to the constellations as they used to, and actually never truly could map exact. Why? Because unlike even 30-degree signs, the 12 constellations that embrace the ecliptic plane vary significantly in size, right? The priestess constellation, like 47 degrees, of course, more than a sign and a half. And that's why I use terms like priestess or scales or scorpion to describe constellations, and words like Virgo and Libra and Scorpio to describe signs, because they're very different things. Even back in the day, I'm looking for a book. Well, it's over there. I'm waving at you. Geminos's Introduction to the Phenomena, a book from the Hellenistic astronomer Geminos, who tells us there's 2 different types of signs. There's constellation signs and there's 12th part signs. And it was in his day, really, where we started understanding more about Earth's third motion, the first motion being our daily rotation, day, and the planets moving through the houses, our secondary motion being our annual revolution about the sun, right? Year, and the sun moving through the signs, and our third motion, our tertiary motion, being the axial precession, the great year, which is like 26,000 years long. And it is suggested that how we tell where we are in that great year, like which of the astrological ages we are currently passing through, is all about which point in space, or perhaps which point in constellational expression, or which point in sidereal sign space the so-called VP, the vernal equinox point, is aligned to. Now, vernal is spring, okay? So when we call 0 degrees tropical Aries the vernal equinox point, we are turning our back on the truth that this world is a tale of 2 hemispheres. So we should probably more accurately describe this point either as 0 Aries or as the east point, the east equinox point. And I'll show you why. Friends, like so many ancient systems of wisdom traditions, the tropical zodiac is a directional device. Winter solstice, which unlike January 1st, is a global moment. This is very important. January 1st, okay, whose clock? In the UK? At the Greenwich Meridian, which, votes cast during colonial days suggest is prime? Actually, the Greenwich Meridian is like halfway through the quote-unquote global day. Like the date line begins halfway across the world, like Christmas Island. So should we look at the 12 a.m. balls drop in that place? That didn't sound too clean. On January 1st, or that moment that takes us from December 31st to January 1st in this strange solar calendar, to say New Year. Well, that's a different time than the time at the prime meridian, or perhaps the old meridian that maybe should be prime at the Great Pyramid of Giza, certainly here in Northern California where I reside. The sun's movement into 0 Capricorn, or 0 Aries, or 0 Cancer, or 0 Libra. These are global moments. I mean, we all share these. They are astronomical moments. And by the way, I'm speaking tropical zodiac when I say that. I mean, the tropical zodiac is so incredibly astronomical. It's earth-astronomical. It's about, as I like to say, Gaia's spine, or the sword of our stone, or the world tree, our rotational axis, which defines the cardinal directions north and south. And that northern pole of Earth is leaning in every moment forever towards 0 degrees tropical Cancer. It's the north point, right? So that when Earth in our orbit is here with that northern point leaning towards the sun, summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, winter solstice in the southern hemisphere, right? It's the sun at the north point. Cancer is north. Libra is west, which is why the Libra glyph looks like the setting sun. Capricorn is solstice, at least when the sun gets to Capricorn. When the sun ingresses tropical Capricorn, it shines directly above Earth's Tropic of Capricorn. Oh, astronomy. Tropikos comes from the Greek turnaround, because at that time, from Earth's point of view, the sun will be at the southern bounds, the Tropic of Capricorn. It will stop, the sun stops, is solstice in Latin, and start moving north for 6 months until it gets to the Tropic of Cancer here, you see? It's hard to do this with a gigantic armillary sphere, which sadly, like most I have found, is actually astronomically inaccurate, but that's a tale for another time. Regardless, you know, the sun at the solstice point, the sun at that point of the tropical zodiac, 0 Capricorn, towards which Earth's southern axis eternally leans, that's a global moment. But in the northern hemisphere, that's the birth of the light. In the southern hemisphere, summer solstice, and so that's the beginning of the sun's, well, daily decline, right? So why instead go for this point? Well, importantly, sun ingress 0 degrees tropical Aries is sun due east. Okay, so not due east of, well, Richmond, California, where, in fact, this is not where the sun will be. The sun is not rising in the east at 2:24:27 clock time, daylight losing's crime or not, right? I've cast a so-called natural zodiac wheel, a 0 Aries wheel, which for the same reason as 0 Aries being a candidate for the astrological new year, is also a kind of a global expression. It also supports this idea that wherever that point is aligned in space will speak towards the essence of the current astrological age. Let me show you that a bit. First, we're going to go heliocentric using this wonderful tool called Solar System Scope, which you can play with online for free at solarsystemscope.com. And let's, I'm going to rewind time a little bit. I'm just going to pull Earth like this. And let's play. And I want you to dig the way that Earth is spinning. Can you see the pole? And let me stop this thing when we can see, a pretty clear continental picture. I think we can zoom in a bit. I lost the Earth. Anyway, do you see the Americas, as they're called today, here? Yeah, so Northern America is kind of Canada, Alaska zone, and then down into the Southern Hemisphere that way. In other words, north is right here, okay? When I align this thing, I like to actually bring it to a solstice. Let's go back in time, and I'll go to like December 21st-ish. I'm not going to get exact for the sake of our time together here today. Oops. Hello, Earth. How wonderful. I'm not sure how we get out of here, though. Oh, that seemed to do it. Cool. All right. I want to be at December 21st-ish. Cool. And what I'm going to do here, so this is Earth's North Pole. I'm going to align everything heliocentric, sun-centered. Apparently I had to click the sun. All right, and then let's zoom in some. Great. And here on December 21st, 2022, the sun's tropical Capricorn ingress, when the sun shines directly above Earth's Tropic of Capricorn, that'll be easier to see like this. I'm going to put the sun south of the Earth, okay? Actually, let's do it this way. So south is up and north is down. Well, that sounds backwards to those of us who were educated by images of the compass rose, you know. Have you been told that southern Egypt is Upper Egypt and northern Egypt is Lower Egypt? You know, the southern Egypt crown was red, and the southern Egypt side was associated with vulture, while northern Egypt, which is Lower Egypt, crown white and serpent. So when the crowns come together and the vulture and the serpent, like you see on Tut's mask, it's this unification of northern and southern Egypt, which respectively are Lower and Upper Egypt. Why would you call southern upper? Many attribute this to the truth that unlike most rivers on Earth, the Nile flows from its source, mountaintop in the south, to the mouth at the Mediterranean Sea in the north. And of course, the Nile is the lifeblood of Egypt. So many suggest, like back in the day, the Sothic calendar, a sidereal calendar tuned to the heliacal rise of Sirius, was actually a solar calendar tuned to the annual flooding of the Nile, which for some time happened around summer solstice. Of course, that's the sun's tropical Cancer ingress for northern hemisphere locations like Egypt, right? Well, northern hemisphere locations like Egypt experience the daily height of the sun. After rising in the east, the sun will reach in the southern sky and then rest in the west. I'm told in Kemet, the land we now call Egypt, there was no term for death. It was simply called a westing, because it was known that what rested in the west, would later rise in the east again. But not until it went through the Duat, through the underworld. Where is that? Where do we find in the northern hemisphere sky the midnight sun? Nowhere. It can't be seen. But where it is, and I'm talking true middle of the night, halfway in time between sunrest and sunrise, the sun is found in north, below the ground. North is the place of the roots from the northern hemisphere experience. Do you see how that's lower, the sun beneath the ground, then rise in the east, reach in the south, which is true for all northern hemisphere temperate locations like Egypt. The sun reaches its daily height in the southern sky. Upper Egypt, you see, rest. Lower Egypt in the north, rise, reach. Upper Egypt in the south, fire, the red crown, vultures who fly, while white, the northern crown. We often see that in medicine wheels associated with the winter, the northern time, and the serpent who lives on the ground and sometimes below, you see? So I put, as we do in the so-called natural zodiac wheel, where left is east, right? It's like the global ascendant, west on the right of the chart, yeah? And the northern hemisphere experience the midheaven is always due south. I should say temperate northern hemisphere, because the tropics have a more dynamic dance. The eye see the imuncelli, the bottom of the heavens, below the ground in the north, for the northern hemisphere experience, okay? So let's put south up, which I have done here in solar system scope. And how do I know? I feel like I've lost the thread. Hold on a second. Let me share again. There we go. How do I know? Well, it's December solstice time. So the sun's Capricorn ingress. So here in this heliocentric model, thanks to solar system scope, I'll just put the sun, quote unquote, above the earth. Okay, so now south is up. Well, if south is up, where's north? Yes, down, right? And actually, as we watch the earth spin, you're going to see that Earth's north pole is down. See that spinning, and dig the continents and all. So here's the moon's Capricorn ingress. Just when the moon is at Earth's south pole. That's tropical Capricorn. The tropical zodiac is tied to Gaia's spine, to the sword of our stone, to the world tree. There's the moon's Aries ingress. Why? Because if south is up and north is down, then east is left. West is right. And I know that's like backwards compared to the compass rose we're typically shown, but this is the rose, at least of northern hemisphere astronomy, but it's also global. Okay, that's the beautiful thing about the directional zodiac. Here comes moon's Libra ingress. There's only one time each year when the sun is exactly in this direction as compared to Earth's spine. Okay, I have north down and east is left. And so right now we're looking at the sun like northeast. No, the south is up, east is left, so the sun is southeast of the center of Earth at this time. That's the sun's Aquarius ingress. Dig the calendar, like January 21st-ish, you see. So tropical zodiac is purely directional. And let's speed this thing up here, and we will find, how do we do that one? This. At this time, here's the sun ingressing tropical Pisces, like February zone, okay? February 19th. And let's just take this to today, March 20th, which is this calendar year of 2022. I think depending on where on Earth you are, the sun's Aries ingress. So I'll just yank the Earth up there. And then align this in such a way that the sun is... I can't get it exact. Let me go forward a little bit more. Something like this. Oh, something like this. Somewhere in there. So now, when the sun is due east of the center of the Earth, it doesn't mean it's east of California or east of New York. Those are different things, right? Or east of Timbuktu. But understand that Earth has a global north. Right? It is literally defined by Gaia's spine, by our rotational axis. It's not, by the way, magnetic north or magnetic south. Those things migrate. True north and true south, directional north and south, are about our rotational axis. Right? And this is like at the heart of Earth astronomy, and therefore Earth astrology. So because there's a global north and a global south, there's also a global east. And it is configured to the so-called VP, or vernal equinox point. Again, I don't love that term because it's hemispheric. we're going to go to another wonderful software, astronomy software, Stellarium, which you can download for free at stellarium.org. Look at where the sun is now. It's on the cross. Although this is not now. I have this thing set to begin at, it looks like March equinox in 2003 for a class I was currently working. Let me hit now. And I'm currently in Boulder, Colorado. Fine. Let me actually just show you, you know, I'm sitting in California at kind of similar latitudes. Boulder's 40 degrees north of Earth's equator. I live 38 degrees north of Earth's equator. And I'm going to bring this to my home in El Sobrante. You see the sun's a little bit earlier in the day, right? The Earth spins from the west to the east, which is why sun rises in New York before it does in San Francisco. So true solar noon will be that when the sun gets to the meridian each day, right? And that's a very local experience. Of course, on the other side of the world, this will be the middle of the night. So it's not about the meridian. That's your local experience of midday. This is about the sun on the cross. Huh. Wait, wasn't Christ crucified at Passover time? Oh, right. You see, let's go back in time. This is a few days before now with the sun in tropical Pisces, which, by the way, in our day and age is water bearer. And tropical Aries begins at Fish's Head. The ram's all the way over here in Taurus space because, my friends, the tropical zodiac is not about any star other than our own. It is Earth astronomy. It is simply about the interface of the planes of day, Earth's equator, the plane of our daily rotation, and the ecliptic, the plane of year, the plane of our annual revolution. You bring in both these grids and it's way too much, okay? But you can see this crossing point, and Stellarium astronomy software even labels that with the Aries glyph. And it is where we begin our measurements of celestial longitude and right ascension. Longitude along the ecliptic plane, right ascension along the equator. So, you know, that the astronomers of our day and age, even those rationalists who will do everything they can to prove astrology fake, you know, why signs and constellations don't align. It's like, okay, well, where do you begin celestial latitude or longitude from, dude? Where do you begin right ascension from? Oh, this point, the vernal equinox, huh? We call that 0 Aries. All right. So let's watch the sun just day by day moving to that point, right? You see how the sun is passing over the equator? And from the south to the north, which means the days in the northern hemisphere are now going to grow longer than the nights, and some will call this the resurrection of the annual light. But you know, Christ was crucified on the cross at Passover time. All right, so by constellations, hopefully you can see we remain in the age of the fish. Interestingly, a thing I love to show my sacred astronomy students is that if we go back in time, let's head back 2,000 years ago, then you will find that the Aries point, or the east equinox point, had just precessed to the fish. Let me show you that. We'll go like a couple thousand years before. And the Aries point then, like, I don't need the equinox sun to show me this. It's just this point that rises due east every day because it is on the celestial equator. It's the place where the ecliptic passes over the celestial equator. Back then, this is about 2000 BC. We'd say we're in the age of the bull, okay? And as we move through years here, we're going to see that point. So it's going to wiggle around because of leap year weirdness, okay? And I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I can do that without the wiggles. So let's just type. I'm going to go from this 1600 BC time to like 1200. And now you see that Aries glyph well within the Ram world, right? So age of Aries. you know, the shepherd kings received their commandments, thou shalt not kill, but before that was written, thou shalt not have false idols, right? And so when Moses came down from the mountain and saw his people worshiping a golden calf, importantly a calf, not a bull, because you see precession takes, it's a retrograde motion, it takes this east equinox point from the high degrees of a sign or a constellational sign to the low degrees. So the calf is at the end of the age of the bull, you see. And what's at the end of the age of the ram? How about the lamb, right? So what happens, let's go like, here's 100 years later, just watch this thing move. Here's 100 years after that, all right? Here's 100 years, no, I couldn't do it. Here's 900 BC, and then, let me go, here's 500 BC, right? Now we're up in like Bull's Island, Sheraton. All right, but watch what happens at the turning of the millennia. Unlike most calendars, Stellarium has a 0 year. Notice that 0 Aries has just gotten to the constellation of Fish. So what happens? Like, the Lamb of God is born, who becomes the fisher of men. What sets opposite the fishes? It's called the priestess. He's born of a virgin. There's the whole fish and loaves scene, okay? And where are we today? Well, if the signs are equal, 30 degrees each, rather than the constellations, which are not. I mean, look at the size of the fishes compared to the ram. Let's bring in the astronomical, International Astronomical Union's constellational boundaries, which I don't support, frankly, too much. But anyway, this is how they divide them. You can see how much more ecliptic the fish is claimed than the ram over here. So constellation, these ages will be different lengths. If we use 12 equal parts like a sidereal zodiac, a star-based zodiac does, it's not constellational either. It picks a star to start and then divides in 12 equal slices of 30 degrees each. Then each age will be about 2160 years long. This might be the beginning of the age of Pisces. It's kind of hard to say. It's a pretty arbitrary thing. Anyway, one thing I do want to show you is this. And actually, let me rewind on this day, this 0 year. Well, why not go to around the equinox time? But mostly I want to rewind and show you how the fishes were rising in the east at that time. And you're going to see why. It was at that time where mythically these two fish were tied together. Why? Do you see how they look like the Aries glyph? And if you watch the sky, you got to tilt your head to the same degree as the latitude on Earth at which you stand, or simply go to the equator. The eastern sky rises like the horns of the ram. This is why the ram is associated with the rising sky, like way back in time, and why Aries is aligned to the eastern sign. This is the sacred astronomy of the thing, friends. So while East in New York and East in California are different scenes, right? We'll never have the same sign rising in any given moment. Their current civil calendar flips 3 hours ahead of mine here in California time. There is a global due east, and it is at this time of the year the sun's Aries Ingress, when the sun not only shines directly above the equator. It happens twice a year when the sun's passing over the equator. At the Aries Ingress, it's passing from the south to the north, the sun on the cross passing over. At the Libra Ingress, it's crossing from the north to the south into southern climes, and then the days grow longer in the southern hemisphere, right? So what is springing here is falling down there. Regardless, we can kind of make a houseless image by just aligning the global east point here, which is constellational fish, sidereal fish in most systems. There's many sidereal zodiacs. It's rather arbitrary, and so are constellational zodiacs, by the way. The tropical zodiac is the only one that is not arbitrary at all. It is fixed to Gaia's spine, which leans in every moment north this way and south this way from a global perspective. All right, so how should we read this thing? I mean, we don't want to take the houses out, but that's a local experience. Like, there's only one house system. Oh, wait. There's so many. The Placidus is a good house system to describe the movement of the day. And I can see in that house system that at the time of this particular Aries ingress here, where I live in Richmond, California, and San Francisco Bay Area, it's Leo rising. So the sun, we say, is the steersman of the chart. It's a fixed sign rising, so they would say that this chart is good for the year, and the sun's just moved into its exalted sign of Aries. Why would that be? Why is the sun said to rule Leo and exalt in Aries? Or maybe because of that, we get some of the energy of Aries and Leo. Now Aries beginning, starting, and devoting ourselves to the mission of what is new. I mean, you can feel that in the energy of the East. If you need a reminder that Eastern is about beginnings, go outside in the morning and watch the sunrise. Okay? Well, traditionally, the sun is said to rejoice in the 9th. Why? That is the time when the sun finishes his daily climb for the day. How do you feel when you get to the mountaintop, right? I mean, the sun then sets in the west and goes down below. Oddly, like modern astrology associates the sun with the 5th house. Why would the sun want night? Traditionally, the 5th is the joy of Venus. Unlike average annual clock time, that would be like, 8 to 10 p.m. So romance, passion, poetry, games of chance, taverns, sex. Those are 5th house things back in the day. Venus, you see. You can follow the light even through the times of darkness through the year to learn more about signs, but that's a hemispheric thing. But through the houses to learn more about the essence of the houses by day. All right. It's strange that in our day and age, we begin our years in the middle of the winter, which is like the midnight of the year. And we begin our days at like clock midnight, which is not true midnight, but kind of close by. Regardless, we begin our days well before you could possibly see the light. But it is at that time when the sun is at the IC, the Imam Cheli, the bottom of the heavens, maybe hell, down beneath the ground, when the sun begins his daily climb. You see, we have evidence of this at sunrise in the east. And in the northern hemisphere, like Egypt, right, the height of the light every day, the sun souths. See Upper Egypt and the red crown and the vulture and this, yeah. And the sun at that time is shifting in a quadrant house system from the 10th house side to the 9th. So this 9th is like a super solar time of the day, right? And the sun has kind of finished that daily climb. You see, so the sun rejoicing in the 9th. Now, what about the sun and its Aries and Leo associations? Well, fire. Okay, but which came first? It's always tricky to express that or explore that in sacred astronomy, which is based upon the idea that astrology is much more than some symbolic language alone. Astrology is the symbolic language, but it is also the poetic breath of nature. And I seek in our natural experience the foundation, the roots of the rules and the proofs of the equations that we astrologers use. I use plenty of like pure symbolic truths as well, but I'm very devoted to questing the astrological essence in nature. Why is the 12th house hidden things? I mean, go watch the sunrise. When the sun is in the 1st, it's below the ground and you cannot see it. Houses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are below the ground. Or maybe we should say, if we follow the sun, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff, right? That's when the sun rises. And the sun rises from the 1st, where it could never be seen, though the birds sing and we see some light of dawn. The sun rises into the 12th. Well, that's weird. But a chart is a fixed moment of time. It's to cross your nail to, you see. The 12th will be the last to rise again, while the stars in the first will always be the first to rise. The stars in the second will succeed the stars in the first in any given moment to the ascendant, the horoscope, which is why the second is a succedent house, you see. The 12th is cadent, it's falling away from the ascendant, which is a strange thing to say because it's actually rising. But regardless, while the sun rises to illuminate the earth, he hides the sky. At night we can tell time with all of these stars. At daytime there can be only one, the sun. Do you feel the Aries and perhaps even the Leo in that essence? So it's a pretty cool chart here where I sit, where we have Leo rising. It's a fixed energy, so it says this works for the entire year. The sun is exalted. That's Aries as a sign. And rejoicing. That's the 9th. And so we get both essential, that's sign-based dignity, and you'll see that on like the medieval scorecard like this, right? The sun at the +8. Whoa, Venus is going for it. Because, by the way, things don't stop at domicile. That's a planet's sign. Or exaltation. But it continues on to triplicity, which you might know as element. So by day, the sun is said to be the principal, quote-unquote, ruler. I don't like that word, of the fire element as we know it today. And there's these terms, many systems for that essence of the bounds, okay, and faces, which you may know as decans. And we can go on and on. Anyway, the sun is juiced up in the medieval scorecard, and Venus even more so, because not only is she at home in Taurus here at the right, almost exact the north lunar node, and shares a mutual reception with the moon in exaltation, because Venus is said to exalt in Pisces while the moon in Taurus, you see. Venus is also said to rule the earth sign triplicity, and let me show you the Egyptian bounds here, and you'll see that Venus is in her own terms. So some say that means she's making the rules, okay? She's not in her own face, which is a different system, and there's many different ways to explore this. This one, in fact, says that she is, because this is a triplicity system, which gives the first 10 degrees of Taurus to Taurus, and therefore Venus, and the next 10 to Virgo, and therefore Mercury, and the next 10 to Capricorn, the 3 earth signs, and therefore Saturn. But the old system, the Chaldean order, which begins here at 0 Aries quite clearly, because Pisces ends with Mars and Aries begins with Mars. It's the only place where we see 2 decans in a row, consecutive decans represented by the same planet, right? There's 7 traditional planets, planetus, wandering lights. Well, if you divide the wheel into 10-degree divisions, you get 36 of them. 7 times 5 is 35, so you need an extra planet. So you get this double Mars thing, which is quite interesting. You see Mars now actually from this tradition in the face of the sun, while the sun, of course, Aries Ingress, along with Mercury at his side, is in the face of Mars. So the sun and Mars, you'll see, have a mutual reception here in face, or decan, right? So more points for both of them. Mars and Mercury, Gemini Mars, Aries Mercury, though they are more square geometrically than sextile in this case. Let's see if that shows up on the grid. It does not. I guess my math must be strict, or I'm looking in the wrong place. Yeah, it's not shown. Regardless, you know, they're much more square than sextile, but from a whole sign perspective, it's the latter. Aries and Gemini as signs are sextile to one another, and Mercury and Mars here have a mutual reception. We say that, well, some would say it does not testify, because Mars will leave the sign for Cancer before Mercury can catch up to perfect that sextile. Regardless, in this moment, they're in each other's homes, and that's a mutual reception and domicile, or so-called rulership, right? So this is all essential dignity. It's like the essential nature of the signs or the planets. The metaphor that I dig is like typecasting an actor. Like there's just something about the sun that really makes sense in Aries. Because again, when the sun rises, there can be only one star. It's quite committed to the light of day. Venus, quite comfortable and quite natural in the Aries or the Taurus expression, you see. So they get a boost in this way. Venus, in this case, would be called the final dispositor of this moment because she's the only planet in her own home sign. But this exchange between Mercury and Mars, which is like a foreign exchange program, they support one another. And in some opinions of how you do these scorecards of essential dignity, well, there's also accidental dignities. And one of those is expressed through planetary sect. So you'll see here that both the Sun and Jupiter are in haze, which is like thumbs up. The opposite in this case is true for Mercury and for Mars. And the reason is with Mercury on the evening star of the Sun, evening star side of the Sun, meaning Mercury will set after the Sun does, then Mercury is handed to the night sect team. And for night sect planets, it's said they prefer a nocturnal sign. They prefer to be on the opposite side of the horizon from the Sun and all sorts of other interesting conditions. That's not true for Mercury or for Mars at this time, which according to the tradition is eternally a planet of the night sect. All right, well, but the Sun and Jupiter are both said to be of the day sect. In fact, they are two of the three triplicity lords of the signs, the trigon that we now call fire signs. So they both have dignity in that regard. Jupiter does not like, from that sect standpoint, and I don't like that term, but I'll use it, does not like to be an evening star. Jupiter is associated with the morning times, the morning side. And so Mercury and Jupiter here are said to be in this, well, they're showing it with Mars. Oh, right, sorry, Jupiter. Oh, yeah, so there's a column missing on this planetary sect thing, which is evening star or morning star. So why they're like giving Jupiter this in haze situation is because he's a daytime planet. It's a daytime chart, meaning the sun is above the ground. It's daytime. That he's in a daytime place, which just means the same side of the horizon as the sun. And he's in a daytime sign, which are the fire, the air signs. And Jupiter is specifically bona fide, it said, in fire signs. And the sun even more so by day, which is why you see the sun in this plus sign here in triplicity, okay? There should be another column there again, which is like Jupiter would only really be in haze if he's also on the morning sides of the sun, which he's not. So the sun in like sect considerations actually is most dignified in this like daytime picture and receives the additional boost of accidental dignity by being in the ninth, being the steersman of the chart, the ruler of the ascendant, right? I mean, so this is a really solid situation for beginning the year, and that might play for the state of California, but we wouldn't cast that from Richmond from a mundane perspective. We're going to go to the state capital, which is Sacramento, but we get the same thing, right? And a trine from Mercury to the ascendant and the like. Well, what about the United States in general? We'd go to Washington, D.C. Oops. Period. No periods. Okay, here we go. Where the sun is actually in the whole sign 8th, the Placidus 7th, we could probably shop around house systems and get that sun to bounce around a bit. Like here's the Porphyry point of view at the time, 7th house. What about Campanus? That will be 7th. Regiomontanus, oh, barely in the 7th side. Oh, equal signs in the 7th. Whole signs in the 8th. Maybe only the whole sign house system puts the sun in the 8th at this Aries Ingress time for the sun on this particular day, this calendar year of 2023. Some will say the beginning of the year. So I kind of work with many house systems, and I think of the sun here as 7th house, 8th sign. In DC, where you see a mutable sign on the rise, the suggestions of mundane astrology is that mutable signs will shift quickly, and so therefore this chart is good only for 3 months. I'm actually in a current state of confusion in regards to that truth, since mundane astrology is not one of my typical practices. I want to go look. I'm going to talk to the robots. Mundane astrology, ingress, mutable rising sign. I should just look to the comments of this live stream because one of you would tell me right now, I'm sure. Is it mutable signs that are said to get only 3 months? Or is it cardinal signs, which traditionally had a bit of a different view? All right. They were called movable signs, the cardinal signs. Okay, yeah, so I was wrong. Thanks for somebody out there telling me so I would go check. It said that the fixed signs will fix the chart's energy for the entire year, the mutable signs for 6 months. So then you would cast a chart again at the sun's Libra ingress for the United States, since we're looking at the capital, current capital in Washington, D.C. And then if it's a cardinal sign rising, then you get 3 months and you cast a new chart at the Cancer ingress, right? 3 months later. I mean, let's go to another place. Oh, you want to go to Moscow? Okay. Let's look at Moscow, Russia in the same moment. Right? So what is global is the planetary placements in the signs. Actually, we measure that from the center of the earth, where we are all one, where we all connect, where there is a global east, which is why the quote-unquote natural zodiac is actually a thing. What is local or particular or topocentric or surface is the houses. So while Virgo might be rising, here in DC, with the steersman of the chart, under the beams, in fact, combust Mercury in the 8th, kind of no matter which way you slice it. In Moscow, just as another example, we have Scorpio rising with Mars in the 7th house, out of bounds. That's a declination of more than 23.5 degrees, but also in the 8th whole sign. So that's an interesting thing. Mars in the 8th, Aries, Mercury in the 8th for Washington, D.C. Oh, I'll let you come to your own conclusions about that, especially in regards to these two forces of the world. So regardless, if we play with these old mundane astrology rules, DC here with Virgo on the rise, mutable sign, that this chart's energies is good for 6 months, but in Moscow, where the fixed sign of Scorpio is rising, then this chart speaks for the entire year. And that most will say you also still want to cast ingress charts for when the sun reaches the Tropic of Cancer and then back to the equator and Libra equinox time or west equinox time, and then to the Tropic of Capricorn as well. But with a fixed sign rising, many will say this is fixed for a year. And I'll just let you have that chart on your screen for a moment. And then I'll go back to DC. And then I'm going to get more global by just choosing to cast the so-called natural zodiac, or the zero Aries wheel, which again has astronomical roots, because this is the point of the tropical zodiac, which is due east of the center of the earth, where we are all one. And in that regard, it works like a global ascendant. And that's why we trace that global ascendant either through the constellations or through sidereal signs. Like, let's just turn this thing into one of the many sidereal zodiacs, Lahiri being a very popular one. And you can see that the sun at its tropical Aries Ingress, because this is that same moment before shown, is here at 6th degree of Lahiri Ayamnancha Sidereal Zodiac. In other words, that would suggest that, yes, we are still in the age of Pisces. The fact that I'm transmitting this thing through space beams, however, and it's being received live by some and other nodes of the World Wide Web of Indra's tech net, and then I can hop on a plane and come see you, and or that we can now have robots write our bios for us. Please don't. It feels pretty dang Aquarian age to me. And that Aquarian thing of connection and the like makes me feel like, stopping this screen share for a moment and checking in with the comments here on the live stream. Hello, and that thing in your hand, Brett, what is it called? This is called an armillary sphere. There's many different versions of them throughout time. So I said earlier that it's... sorry. I've got to go shortly for a student, but we got a little bit more time. That was quite alarming, wasn't it? So were some of those charts we looked at a moment ago. All right, the armillary sphere should have the ecliptic plane, which is the zodiac, tied to the tropics, which should be this and this, parallels of latitude. And also, well, we definitely want the Virgo-Libra cusp at the equator, which is here, okay? And we want the Pisces-Aries cusp at the equator here. Aries should be on the northern side, which is not happening. Like this Sagittarius-Capricorn cusp, the Tropic of Capricorn should be tied to the Tropic of Capricorn, not Cancer. It's backwards. So are the drawings in many, many ancient sources. I've been learning a lot from Bruce Schofield's wonderful astrological chart calculations lately. This is an armillary sphere shown here. It's also wrong, by the way. And I can't find one online that's right. I found one I can build myself. It's like this wooden kit, but it's been in the closet for a bit because so busy. Happy Equinox came into the chat, and happy Equinox to you, armchair astrologer. I could use some armchairs around here. Some arms on this stool thing. All right, heliocentric is confusing. Can you explain it by what we actually see? That's a really wonderful question. I do not have time to right now. I love that you asked that though, PK, because I'm currently actually building that section, the heliocentric, the helio-sun-centered versus the geocentric, earth-centered view of the solar system, and how you can see the two relate. And how, of course, here we are looking from Earth and should be most concerned with Earth. So, 99.99% of astrology practiced is geocentric, but there is certainly a heliocentric avenue to astrology. I think that will open more and more. And it's important for us to understand that while we are looking from the geocentric or Earth-centered view, if we don't understand the heliocentric or sun-centered truth of our solar system, we can't understand things like, the retrograde portion of synodic cycles, or really all of synodic cycles of the planets at large. So a really wonderful question. I love that you asked it right now. It's quite synchronistic, especially here where the Aries Ingress has Leo on the rise, and it's so solar, So yeah, heliocentric astrology in general can be confusing, but I think heliocentric astronomy, not so much. I mean, we were all given that sun-centered solar system image from the beginning of primary school, were we not? How do you explain Orion's belt coming off the equatorial line? Oh, that's a wonderful question also, PK. For those who want to start to connect the chart in the sky and the sky in the chart, take my Sacred Astronomy course, and maybe even wait, because it is being revisioned and will be offered again in this Northern Hemisphere summertime. But it's really important that we get to learn our ecliptic stars, right? We want to know, like, that plane of the year, the plane of the Earth-Sun relationship. And since our solar system is relatively flat, that heart of the zodiac, the ecliptic, is where the planets travel, right? But the equator is the plane of the sky's rotation, the plane of the day. And the equatorial stars are becoming like calling to me more and more. While the ecliptic stars will not change with the Earth's tertiary motion or precession, the equatorial stars do. So they're very much a statement of our day and age. And that Orion's belt, and specifically the easternmost star of the belt, Mintaka, is now aligned to Earth's equator. It's a powerful, magical, beautiful expression of our day and age. In fact, and I've shown in my work that the Washington Monument, right, is actually meant to be, well, many things, but one of them is from the west side where Abe Lincoln sits in the memorial, the rising of Orion's belt, because in our day and age, due to this equatorial alignment that you mentioned, PK, I love that, how quickly you must have seen that in the stellarium, I think. Maybe not. In the northern hemisphere, Orion's belt rises like a pillar and then sets kind of like vertically or horizontally into the horizon. The opposite is true in the southern hemisphere. And different parallels of the Earth offer a slightly different expression. So that's where your question sends me, and I love that you asked it. I'm on TV now. Better to see me. Right, I guess we can call this is the new TV. Oh, Kaylee B sent me, right. Kaylee's amazing. And hey, PK, and hey, Brett, do you think that the new discovery of the Earth's core reversing rotation a few times, slowing our speed, slowing down by 0.1 degrees per year, change calculations at all? I have not looked into that science yet. I gotta say, my initial reaction is I don't believe it. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Sarah. I look forward to looking into it a bit. I wonder what the symptoms of such a shift are, like what data is coming in to support that theory. Here, listening, building my garden and sun mapping. Yes, Rhiannon, right on. Working with our own shadow, putting a stick in the ground, working with the shadow during the day, the sundial, working with the length of the shadow at midday throughout the year, the meridian calendar. This is doing the shadow work, which will help us understand the beautiful role that we each play in this marriage of heaven and earth. Hi, Gemini, greetings from Samui. Definite sky shift noticeable this close to the equator. Happy equinox. Yeah, amazing. Thanks for that, Momo. I mean, the equator, since the sun at this time of the year is on the celestial equator, it's the midday sun at Earth's equator is directly overhead and casts no shadows. This is always true. The sun's declination, which at equinox time is 0, because declination is an angular measurement north or south of Earth's equator, the sun's declination will tell you where on Earth, at least by terrestrial latitude, the sun currently shines from the zenith directly overhead and casts no shadows. So like when the sun ingresses, tropical Taurus in a month from now, the declination will be about 11.5 degrees north. And that means somewhere on Earth, 11.5 degrees north of Earth's equator, the sun will be directly overhead. And as the Earth spins in a day, the sun will be directly overhead for all earthly locations at that latitude. When the sun ingresses tropical Cancer, it will be above the Tropic of Cancer. Right? When the sun ingresses tropical Capricorn, it will be above Earth's Tropic of Capricorn. So rationalists are like, yeah, your signs are off, the constellations. That's not Capricorn at December solstice. That's Sagittarius. The sun is aligned to the Sagittarius constellation. And I say, why don't you call it the Tropic of Sagittarius then, dude? And they're like, what do you mean? That doesn't have anything to do with it. It's like, learn some astronomy and let's talk. I'd like to teach you some if you'd have an open mind. All right, well, astrology, right, is also a thing. Let me just end here as I'm rushing off to see a student with some of the images that I feel here. I mean, amazingly, for so many of the astronomical reasons that I've shared today, and hopefully they're landing for you, the sun's Aries Ingress does speak of a beginning. It's a launch, it's a new year. And that doesn't only have to do with Northern Hemisphere spring, again, because sun ingress 0 Aries on the celestial equator, where the ecliptic passes over the equator from the south to the north, means spring in the northern hemisphere, but fall equinox in the southern hemisphere, where the midday sun is quickly falling to its depth at winter solstice time. Despite that tale of two hemispheres in the seasonal opposition, this sun is due east of the center of Earth, where we are all one. So this is a time of new beginnings. Like, that is the support, the very real astronomical support for zero Aries as a beginning of the year. However, look at the endings you see here, okay? The moon in the last day of the lunation. The last day of a Pisces lunation. We will have a new moon, a moon-sun conjunction tomorrow. And a new moon this close to the equinox is a big deal, because new moon is like the beginning of a cycle too. However, new moons are no moons unless you happen to be on Earth in a place of the moon's shadow during the time of a solar occultation, a solar eclipse, right? This is not a solar eclipse. So the true new moon really begins the day after the conjunction, the synod, where the moon is first seen reborn, interestingly, in the sunset west. Which is why many ancient calendars that tune their months to the first visible or the young moon actually begin days at sunset and read from the right to the left. But that's a tale for another time. Okay, regardless, you see, it's this kind of beginning of the year. It's the ending of a month. We also see, while Mercury and Venus have recently begun their foray into like new signs, and perhaps we especially celebrate this for Venus in Taurus, who is so high and bright as an evening star at this time. Look, Venus is, especially in the nighttime charts, let's go back to Moscow here, and I'll show you the sect dignity, and you're going to see Venus is I guess not in Moscow. We would have to find a place where the sun has set and Venus has not yet. This is like taking traditional astrology to the maps, which is a thing I just love to do. And Astro Gold has made this really easy for me to relocate charts real time, which is beautiful. Whereas the setting sun, but it's a zero Aries wheel. You know what? We don't have time for that today. Anyway, there's places where the sun has set, but Venus is not yet, where Venus is going to be in haze, because she likes the evening signs. She's of the evening set, the benefic of the evening set. So Taurus being a nocturnal sign, she likes the nocturnal side, which means the sunset, but Venus as an evening star has not yet. And many other conditions that really boost Venus, not only the final disposer, the only planet in domicile at this time, but also through many accidental dignity considerations. Venus is particularly bright right now. Go outside. I hope you've been receiving her light. And Venus is, she's at the end of a cycle, depending on where you begin the cycles, but it's going to be some time where she's shining as this evening star, and she'll be getting further and further from the sun, like elongating. But this is a time of particular brightness, not nearly as bright as when Venus begins to pass the Earth before her retrograde. Regardless, we see Venus kind of coming into a new sign, whereas she's at the side of the node, and remember the nodes travel retrograde, so they're like at the end of their time in Taurus, Scorpio. Mars clearly at the end of his Mars, exactly, alarming. Mars at the end of this like forever journey through Scorpio, right? I mean, it's been amazing. Mars first entered, sorry, I said Scorpio, but Gemini. Mars entered Gemini in August of 2022. Mars usually is in a sign for 2 months, but since this tropical sign of Gemini has hosted the entirety of Mars's retrograde travel, Mars has been in Gemini, and it will be in Gemini for over 7 months, I believe. That's the number. The Cancer Ingress comes soon. So Mars is ending this long retrograde loop. He won't end this time out of bounds for a while. Mars is actually shining somewhere above Earth that is north of the northern bounds of the ecliptic and the sun. That's the Tropic of Cancer, you see. So Mars is out of bounds north, helping us like freak out a bit. But you know, you can see endings there. You can certainly see endings in Pluto, right? Last degrees of Capricorn. He's ingressing Aquarius this week. Now he will station retrograde for some unfinished business in the sign of Capricorn. It's amazing that we had these weird bank things when Pluto entered Capricorn, weird bank things with Pluto quote unquote leaving Capricorn. A lot of the world's structures and government weirdness has certainly come to life, hasn't it? Let's not go there right now. We don't have time, thank you. But Pluto in Aquarius, and I'm very interested / concerned in the rapid rise of the AI. Jupiter you see here in the middle of the sign, Chiron as well, but you don't see Chiron, okay? You do see Jupiter. Well, that's not beginnings or endings, is it? Yes. Why? Because Jupiter is ending his time as a visible evening star. The sun is chasing Jupiter down. Watch it after sunset. Say goodbye to Jupiter. Jupiter will go under the beams of the sun for about 40 days and 40 nights, and then reappear, emerge with the heliacal rise, reborn in the morning sky in Aries. And then we'll soon actually travel into Taurus anyway. So one of the things I'll say that is not usually this apparent in an Aries Ingress chart is this image of endings and beginnings. I didn't even speak of Saturn, who of course is just recently ingressed Pisces, and you know, these years of Aquarian travel. And unlike Pluto's return to Capricorn for some unfinished business, Saturn's retrograde loop will keep him in the sign of tropical Pisces this year. So endings and beginnings, endings and beginnings. I'll say most of the planets are moving quite quick in their travel right now, especially the very fleet-footed Quicksilver one, Mercury. And that's something I would encourage you to bring into the way that you work with this beginning of a new astronomical year. All planets are direct, except for the nodes, which are usually retrograde, so they're direct too. when the nodes station direct, the nodes of the moon station direct, I call that a directrograde, because they usually precess and bring us through an 18.6 year cycle that helps us understand the 26,000 year precessional cycle through the astrological ages, which we spoke about a bit before. And so this is the calf, you see, the young bull degrees before the node regresses to sign of Aries. However, it's now aligned to the constellation of the Ram, because our sacred study, this sacred science, is not only eternal and therefore beautiful, but it's dynamic and ever-changing, and it's a kind of confusing thing. It is my hope that this video has helped pet that cosmic cat. It has confirmed what you have always known, have opened some new windows of contemplation, practice, and play, and in true Gemini fashion, may have brought more questions than answers from my heart to yours. Thank you for drinking Astrology tea with me. Time to run now to a student. I'm looking forward to that. It's a full day. And speaking of, that's what I do. I love astrological consultation, tuning into folks' soul songs with them. I love working with my dear friend Eric Deutsch to create actual songs of folks' birth charts. And you can learn more about that at GeminiBrett.com, where you can book a reading with me or book a mentorship package, or check out, if you like studying at your own pace, my Sacred Astronomy for Astrologers at the courses page, and the Golden Year of Earth Astrology, which, contrary to what is said on the website currently, I need to work on that, was actually ran last year, but it's deep dives into many astrological topics, so check it out if you would like. As I said before, I am like revisioning my Sacred Astronomy work now to present the topics that will help you put astrology's feet on the ground in a new way, and I believe it will be ready for public display and learning together come Northern Hemisphere summer months. When stars align. I hope you'll be on my mailing list, which you can sign up for there at GeminiBrett.com. I don't send mail often, but I do sometimes. And if you're watching this in real time, in 2 days, I will be at Astrology Hub's game-changing transits panel and would love to see you there. I should mention my particular affiliate link when I say that, but it's not happening. If you're on my mailing list, that was sent out to you. So get on my mailing list. I don't send often, but when I do, it's usually about fun things to join. And I do look forward to sharing more about workshops and classes and courses that I will be presenting later this year. I'm currently, by the way, engaged with my first teacher, Daniel Gemario, in sharing some astronomy, astrology, harmony, intention around the lunar standstill cycle, which I will be teaching more and more of. But if you'd like to check out that course, there's one live class that will still be presented, but of course the rest have been recorded. They await your study. It's been a great thing. You can find your way there by typing in GeminiBrett.com/standstill, which will take you to a hidden place, as will GeminiBrett.com/eclipse, because this Aries new moon tomorrow, this moon-sun conjunction, is the first of 2 Aries new moons in this calendar year of 2023. That's one of the old definitions for a blue moon, 2 moons in the same zodiac sign, and the second one will be a ring of fire, an annular solar eclipse. So it's just about time to study the deep sacred astronomy and powerful astrology of eclipse season. And there are hours and hours and, well, decades of hours of transmissions waiting for you at GeminiBrett.com/eclipse. Hope to see you there, somewhere in space, or even more powerfully, somewhere on Earth someday. When stars align, friends, I